bad idea. All right, it's working fine. Welcome to my lightning talk on one of our awesome customers, Matsmart. They are based in Sweden, longtime Drupal users and very big supporters of Drupal Commerce. Really, couldn't ask for a better customer in the sense that not only do they understand open source software, but they really consider it a privilege to contribute to it. So let's hear a little bit about their story. And if you happen to live in a country where they do business, I highly commend them to you as a place to go buy your groceries online. So Matsmart, the way they describe their company is that they eliminate food waste online. And they do that by basically getting near expired merchandise or damaged boxes or whatever, and they resell those groceries through their websites for a discount. So here you can see this is their Swedish homepage, visible in the screenshot there. And they have scaled over the years from a startup based on Drupal Commerce, built in-house, to a business that does tens of millions of euros in online sales a year through Drupal Commerce, both 1.x and now 2.x. So they engaged us some time ago to take their entire web platform fully headless. And when I use that phrase, headless, most people are probably at least somewhat familiar with the term. But the idea is that rather than using Drupal to provide both the back end and the front end of their website, Drupal provides the back end, so the whole data model for content, for products, search indexes, integrations, et cetera, user accounts. But the front end is provided by something different. In their case, a React app, which harkens back to Dries' keynote. They chose React as well because they can use React Native to power a native mobile app. If I wanted to go back to my hop inception, but I'll keep the phone off. So using React enabled them to basically create one front-end application that they could use on the web, use on mobile, but then also replicate across TLDs or top-level domains. So not only do they have matsmart.se, which you saw on the previous slide, they have matsmart.fi, which you can see here. And frankly, they're this perfect example of what it means to scale with Drupal Commerce through every stage of growth. Because they launched just one full stack Commerce 1.x site, built it internally, launched it on Acquia. That was in 2014. Starting in 2016, they engaged us first just to improve performance so they could reach their peak sales. At this time, this was back before the holidays. I can't remember what they were trying to scale to at the time, but it was some number of hundreds of concurrent customers shopping and checking out, transacting all at once. And if you've used Drupal 7, full stack in the past, that once you have that many authenticated users, either because they're logged in, because they have a shopping cart, things start to break down. And so they worked with us to help them scale, doing some common things like database optimizations, but then also beginning to do some fun things like progressively decoupling the sort of heavy parts of the front end. And that really kicked into full gear in 2017. So at that point in time, we looked at things that we could optimize. They had already started working on the site, began using a tool called Findify for their product catalog. So they weren't dependent on the Drupal views module or search API integration with Solar to create their own product catalogs. That was great, but you still had slow cart performance because not only does creating a shopping cart in Drupal Commerce give you a session normally by default, thereby bypassing many of the caching strategies that a lot of sites have in play. But the shopping cart form is built by views, and so you have views that have to render, the forms API that has to process user input, and so on. And all of these things start to break down at scale because you have things like the expensive render pipe, or in the case of the default shopping cart form, you start to blow up your form cache table. And then, of course, as you start to deal with line item revisions, your revision data tables start to balloon. And so we just began to decouple these things, decouple the shopping cart form, decouple user authentication, decouple things like favorites, and then the whole checkout form itself by beginning to use Klarna Checkout, a European-centric payment gateway that basically lets you create these webhooks or just integration points where you feed them the tax or the shipping rates that need to be visible in the order, but like the whole checkout thing is actually an iframe managed by the payment gateway themselves. And then there are those kinds of solutions in the US as well. And then eventually in 2018, we helped them go fully headless. And so that meant making sure that every aspect of the website had some kind of a REST resource behind it. And it was around this time that we were already thinking internally that our product strategy for Centarro would be providing a headless backend for Drupal Commerce anyways. In other words, giving people a sort of quote unquote SaaS version of Drupal Commerce built on Drupal 8 that would just provide the backend, not the front end. So it would be suitable for companies that had their own front end teams or never wanted to actually touch Drupal or Drupal Commerce, just wanted an API, wanted to integrate that API into what they were already doing. Or across many dozens or hundreds of web properties. And so throughout 2019, especially toward the end of the year, we really kicked in a lot of our collaboration with them into high gear. Again, creating modules that you've probably seen on Drupal.org if you're following Drupal Commerce, like the Commerce API. And this was kind of taking our whole Commerce Cart flyout and Commerce Cart API to the next level to basically use the core JSON API module and expand that with resources that made working with Drupal Commerce easier and a bit more opinionated. And so then starting this year, we actually began going live in new markets with the sort of same front end, but Drupal Commerce 2.x backend hosted and managed by our team. So really, like I said, that perfect use case that really captures our vision, which is that open source software can truly power a company through every stage of growth. And eventually, maybe you end up at a scale where you have to work with a service provider like us. We want that to be the case where it makes sense. But, frankly, like they also could have just chosen to continue using the open source software and scaling their team out internally. Different strokes for different folks. We're just happy to be a part of the story. So, their site really was able to go fully headless because they chose third-party web services that enabled them to not sacrifice functionality while not having to reproduce every bit of a checkout form themselves in their own custom JavaScript components. Because when you think about like going headless with Drupal Commerce, especially 2.x, one of the main things that you're losing is the fact that we have this whole checkout system with multiple checkout flows that you can configure and have different folks enter different checkout experiences, yada, yada, yada. Like all of that stuff you have to reproduce over the API. And so using something like Klarna, integrating with PostNord directly for their shipping rates was all fantastic. We're in the US, you can look at services like Avalara, which lets you use JavaScript to calculate your tax rates, or even autocorrect addresses, that kind of stuff. And in their case as well, we worked with them to define this sort of middleware that connects to their ERP to do things like stock holds, some of that other stuff that you may have to do, like once customers start creating carts and you don't want to oversell inventory, because obviously if they're selling out overstock merchandise, they can't just go into the negatives in terms of their stock level, because they can't just go get more stock from the manufacturer. This is near expired or damaged goods. It's just not the kind of thing that they can go whip up more of. But ultimately, they've automated their way toward thousands of sales a day. I'm not at liberty to speak about their peak volumes, but it's high. It's among the highest of any Drupal Commerce site that I know of in the wild. Maybe absent some others who will not be named, at least since I'm being recorded, right? You can't just give away all the secrets. But no, so these guys do fantastic. And like I said earlier, like what's awesome about Matsmart and really captures like our spirit is the sense that even though they're working with us in this sort of like fully managed, SaaS vendor relationship, bringing that open source collaboration to the table was really important. so that like when they're contributing new features to our core platform, what we call Centarro Commerce, those features are automatically available to every other subscriber, every other user of this version of Drupal Commerce. And frankly, most of you as well, because a lot of these features just become part of the core Drupal Commerce modules themselves, or like I said earlier, the Commerce API module, or other integration modules like Commerce Klarna. So all of these features continue to be released for the benefit of the entire community. And we're seeing that across all of the Centarro Commerce subscribers. Another recent addition essentially sponsored the Salesforce Marketing Cloud connection, so that you can get your marketing data back into your marketing automation software. And we continue to see these kinds of things. Payment gateways are very classic, contributed modules that come out of client engagements for us. So you can look and see some of that going live now, like the Commerce CyberSource module getting a Drupal 8 release, or the Commerce Secure Trading module, sponsored by Indigo Herbs, very nice British company and contributor to Drupal. So at the end of the day, like our story here with Matsmart, and the story that we try to bring with all of our customers, is that like our platform, Centarro Commerce, or if you're just using it as the open source variant, our support platform, Centarro Support, are there to just help teams be successful. Because we see, like for Drupal Commerce, a real key value proposition relative to the other big SaaS platforms is this ability to adapt to change and to scale through different stages of growth. A lot of companies, when they bump up against the boundaries of what they can do on Shopify, will then have to look to the next big platform to re-platform to grow. And with Drupal, thanks to the strengths of Drupal itself, you don't have to do that. You don't have to just look for that off-ramp to grow. But what's nice about Centarro Commerce, at least being open source, is that Matsmart knows that at the end of the day, like they can stay with us. We can manage it for them. They can have any number of front ends running Drupal Commerce that they want to. But if they ultimately need to, they can also similarly off-ramp. And so what we're giving them is this ability to switch from a typical full stack Drupal Commerce situation where you're going to be limited by who you can hire and how greatly you can scale by the limitations of Drupal itself as the front end, to going to this sort of modern decoupled architecture. But since their whole back end, is basically Drupal Commerce, and their front end is a React app that they've developed in-house and control, if they ever need to, they can off-ramp. But so long as they're with us, they get that benefit of collaboration. So again, just to kind of break it down, what we've done for Matsmart, and we're trying not to do for other companies, we've launched other sites since the Matsmart launches earlier this year, is that we're building essentially an open SaaS on globally supported open source software that provides a complete e-commerce platform, right? It's not just a few features. Like, it's actually a complete framework and abstract data model that's more robust than most of what you'll find online, with a full REST IPA. I'm sitting here already thinking about happy hour. A full REST API, which will power modern decoupled architectures, fully managed in a cloud environment that can be scaled, but with an off-ramp, so that customers can off-ramp at any time, but benefit from open source collaboration so long as they're working with us. This is what we've done for Matsmart. It's obviously what we'd love to do for other folks as well. If you or your organization find yourself in that scenario, feel free to reach out. Didn't know my phone number was in there, but there it is. So if you also just want to talk some night, give me a call, and I'll be sure to pick up and chat Drupal or life or whatever it is that you want to talk about. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoy the rest of your DrupalCon. And I don't know exactly if the chat room closes, but I'm happy to stick around and chat if anybody has any questions. And I'll take advantage of the fact that you can hear me as long as you can hear me. Let's see. Oh, look at this. I can even add Ryan. What happens here? Like, do we eventually get kicked out? I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, but to your question, Ryan. Yeah. The idea is that, well, for the sake of the video, Ryan asked in the chat, when we say SaaS, do we mean hosted and owned by Centarro? And I'd say it's hosted by us, but not owned by us. There are a few modules that are in like the Centarro Commerce stack that enable us to kind of manage the fleet, or to deploy updates to every kind of fully managed subscriber. But other than that, like the kind of private modules, I guess, are just about like us managing these and running them at scale. But the ownership, it's all open source software, and there's an off ramp. So at the end of the day, the customer retains their data and can take their code and files and go at any time. Obviously, we haven't had to hit that yet because we've only just launched the product this year, but I'm sure we'll figure out the kinks in that model along the way.
Because I guess my question is, so we're all self-hosting our site right now, and I'm also interested in pursuing decoupling, especially our product listings and stuff like that, because there's lots of things that we want to do that we can't really right now. So, I'm just wondering if the solutions that you're building for SaaS can also be self-hosted. Maybe not the
absolutely, the commerce, No, the commerce API, may do most of what you need, so you would be able to just add that to your site and make use of the REST resources that it provides. The things that we're doing in our instances, like I said, are mostly about like centralized management of like a high volume of sites, and then also like scaling up and down resources if need be. But it's kind of nothing there that you wouldn't be able to reproduce. Now, trying to think through it.
So the SaaS
the
part
only thing
is
you'd have to figure out
the managed hosting portion of it, pretty much, and the rest of it's available through normal commerce.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, and something we may like have features there that like have some lag time before they get released on Drupal.org, just so we make sure we can get to a full release or whatnot.
Yeah.
But right now we're basically seeing it more as a way for large numbers of people to still collaborate on open source software, but for organizations that basically have time but not money to manage it themselves, they can basically get that benefit of collaboration by just using our service to manage it for them. So,
and are you at all interested in doing paid work for, I guess, for us, where we want to start decoupling some of that stuff without the whole SaaS solution?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you go to centarro.io/support, that just kind of like gives the rundown both on like the support agreement, which you already know about, but then also consulting services. And under our consulting services, architecture, more just like hands-on coaching if you needed that. Certainly happy to share anything that we've learned in building sites like Matsmart or other client sites. To the end of the day, sharing is caring, and we trust that you learning you learning will result in you supporting other folks too. So it is, Simon. Simon, your question was any plan to ease the pain of a decoupled on-site and off-site payment gateway, and really like that's kind of dependent on the APIs. You're gonna sign. Okay, we'll see you, Ryan. It's really dependent on the APIs. We do that for the ones that we maintain. So, for example, PayPal Checkout, the Braintree Hosted Fields APIs, those kinds of things. We make sure that they work in decoupled scenarios. So, like if you went to our React demo, which I think, let's see, it's React. Yeah, it's react.demo.centarro.io. We make sure that these are functioning outside of the context of Commerce Checkout. But yeah, like they're the main paradigm for payment gateway integration module is that it's expecting a checkout form to be there. So obviously you basically just need to make sure that you're picking an API that can work via JavaScript without much input from the back end. Not sure what else to say there. In our experience, I mean, we basically just use the Drupal Commerce instance to just kind of feed the configuration that we need into the settings array, and then we just integrate the JavaScript API directly, using whatever SDK the payment gateway makes available. Let's see, I don't see anything else there. Yeah, definitely check out Snipcart. I'm just looking at the back scroll. Definitely check out Commerce, and then storefront, and you point it at an API. Works would be awesome. Similarly, I'd love to see that for Snipcarts. EC La Lune, which, Simon, I don't know if you work there or not, but EC La Lune has a great case study on Snipcart's website where they used where you Snipcart as the front end with the Drupal Commerce back, and I think that's fantastic. And that's, frankly, like, again, I know that we're well beyond the bounds of what the session was supposed to be. Like I think that the future Drupal user will never touch Drupal. Will never actually even have to configure Drupal. It will be a JavaScript developer, or development team where there's like one person who's responsible for maintaining the Drupal instance, and then like a team of people who actually manage, the JavaScript applications on top of it. And so I think anything that we can do to build that future, I think is what we ought to be focused on. It's what Matt from our team is focused on, empowering. When I hear Dries talking about giving us framework, or rather like a pattern to follow for React components, I'm all about that, because we've been trying to figure out what does that look like for us to have default React components for Drupal Commerce sites. Like having official ways to do that are supported would be awesome. So, and frankly, I think that we'll find a lot more Drupal developers in that hypothetical or theoretical future than we will trying to turn everybody into object-oriented PHP developers and train them on Drupal APIs. So, well, I guess I'll go ahead and I guess end this by leaving. I don't know exactly how this works, but appreciate everybody listening in and joining us. And we'll see you around. We'll be manning the booth during the live exhibit hall hours. Feel free to stop by and chat some more. We'll talk to you later. You bet. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for joining the video too. That's great. Bye-bye.